Doctors in Russia are accusing the government of covering up its coronavirus outbreak, and denying them protective equipment. Putin is going to reduce those pension numbers one way or the other. Shocking. So shocking. Russia has zero history of behavior like this. That won't end well for them, unfortunately. Why are all world leaders a bunch of fucking goddamn assholes? It's only 3. 6 Rentgens. It's almost like global bad actors want to lull their political and economic adversaries into a false sense of security so they get hit harder by the virus/s. Russia's economy would collapse if they did anything. This is a really bad time for Russia to do the whole Russia thing. I live in Russia and I can hopefully shed some light. The common feeling around here is that this new virus is a fraud and that it is just another flu. Plenty of media influencers shut down any cautiousness as panic and tell people not to worry about it. The general public buys this, but you should know that the general public here isn't very sharp, to say nicely. That being said, the actual medical staff and the local governments are taking it very seriously. My firm receives daily letters with updates and orders from the local government on how to handle the outbreak and what safety measures to take. My sister came back from the UK a few days ago and 2 doctors have come to my home to take tests, which they said would take 5 days to reveal. Doctors had full protective gear and came almost immediately after being called. She is under mandatory quarantine, and they will come back to take tests from everyone else in 10 days. Now, another important factor here is the recent pneumonia outbreak. Over the last few months there have been a lot of pneumonia cases, with few of my distant relatives also affected, and it's been in the news also that the number of pneumonia cases has risen sharply year to year by about 30%, 2,000 cases. While one could guess that this is not pneumonia but rather the new coronavirus, the symptoms don't support this. Most of those people didn't visit any of the affected counties, ever in their life, and very young children, as was case with my relatives, are falling seriously ill too, which is not similar to the way coronavirus affects age groups. It is my opinion, although I'm not a medic, that those are not connected. I reckon the government doesn't hide the real numbers because it can't afford to. They just are slow to react. The general public doesn't take it seriously and tests take way too long for us to see a clear picture of today. Russia is also very large with much less traveling/social gatherings done by people than in Europe. It is likely only big cities such as Moscow will be seriously affected. But since Moscow is so far away from China, the virus didn't come there until recently and most likely originated from Europe, after Europe began to have outbreaks. This means Russia is still at an early stage of the outbreak where a lot of people might not have any symptoms and those that do might write it off as a cold and not get tested. Given the average death age of just 62, Russia has very few people of the high-risk category anyway. Those that do get tests have to wait for at least 5 days to get the results, resulting in a seemingly unrealistic figure of cases. I think those things explain it better than the government trying to hide. Although I wouldn't be surprised. Another good documentary to see, like the Chernobyl cover-up, LOL. Country run by supervillain does evil thing. More at 11. Amazing how China, Iran, and Russia all seem to have said the same thing about the number of people infected in their country. Seems to be many turncoats in their country who just want to discredit the bang-up job they're doing/s. Yup. Have you looked at Moscow's reported numbers? It's absurd how low it is. Them and North Korea aren't showing the real numbers. Shocker. Which sucks, because Russia has a lot of really good doctors and specialists and a long tradition of medical research. The world needs them right now. We need all countries comparing notes and working together on this thing. Weird, all these top-down countries seem to always suppress everything. Russia's Chernobyl moment. The reboot. It's funny how often Republicans and Russians react the same way in a crisis. I knew something is wrong when I saw such low numbers of infected PPL in Russia. Removed. Inconceivable. I think most of the governments decided to let it burn through their populations, and are doing just enough to hope the angry mob doesn't come for them after the dust settles. I certainly wasn't anti-Trump before this. Russia shutting down their China border on January 30th. Trump completely obsessed with pointing out the virus started in China? I'm starting to believe it's been in Russia for a while. Trump doesn't give a shit about saving Americans or anyone else. He's focused on his assets. If he had a shred of fucking humanity, he would have lifted the sanctions on Iran and China. He wouldn't have states outbidding each other on PPE. Now is not the time for fucking politics. I think the CCP is shit to their people, but we may need their support right now. Trump still can't let go of his ego. We need Jack Ma, Bill Gates, and Norway's PM running this show, or we are all going to be fucked. I believe it. Russia is on some bullshit. They just passed a constitutional amendment that allows Putin to remain in power until 2036. Edited from 2038 to 2036 . This kind of shit is how a plague starts. USA is turning into that. I'm really curious what the rich would do if they got their way and all the poor people were gone. Be a lot of shit and trash everywhere. I feel like it would make a good movie as the lower rich get forced to do labor and just can't, get exhausted and die. In Russia, virus tests you. As a doctor in America working at a hospital without adequate protective supplies, listening to Donald Trump pretend his response is curbing the pandemic, you could absolutely swap Russia out for the United States and it would be accurate here as well. I tell you, I for one am shocked that the Russian government would cover something up. I'm seeing a pattern in world government responses: US, UK, Brazil, Russia. All trying to bury their heads in the sand just like they did during the 1918 pandemic, trying to pretend that the virus isn't global. Surprise, surprise. Russian here. I caught cold this Tuesday with those symptoms: mild dry cough, fever, no running nose. Decided to stay home and called a doctor. When he came to see me, he didn't even take my temperature. I don't have a thermometer, but he didn't measure the temp nevertheless. So, my diagnosis is a mild cold. The treatment is pretty standard: stay home, sleep well, drink more and all that BS. I wonder if I get tested later, will it show retrospectively whether I actually had COVID-19? Stay safe, guys. Next article. Several doctors in Russia commit suicide/go missing. Follow-up: a number of doctors found dead after committing suicide by jumping off bridge into river and shooting themselves in the head 3x. The same way they hid the Chernobyl news. Sounds like Trump. Trump is outbidding states trying to buy PPE supplies after he tells governors to do the job he's supposed to be doing and buy the supplies. The governors then go out, bid on supplies, but then FedGov under Trump swoops in and outbids the governors on those same supplies. So, another day goes by without the much needed supplies for our hospital staffs and first responders. He's so willfully destructive and dangerous. And still inadequate test kits. Where are the ones he promised the people on national TV a month ago? Week after week of promised test kits still not fulfilled. Who test kits could have been ordered and used to fill the gap, but Trump decided to limit testing with rigid guidelines, keeping the infected cases artificially low and allowing this to spread unchecked. It doesn't take a Harvard education to figure out what he's doing. Sounds pretty familiar. Now, where have I read that before?